is John Kohler with DiscountJuicers.com. Today I have another exciting episode for you. What we're going to do today is make nut butter, or specifically peanut butter, in the Omega VRT 330 HD juicer. Now the Omega VRT 330 HD is the heavy-duty model of the Omega VRT that includes the 8 times harder screen. Now the Omega VRT 350 HD model and the VRT 350 is the same machine. They always include the HD screen. I only recommend that you do this task with the HD screen because it is stronger. The standard screen on the original VRT 330 may break if doing this particular task because it puts stress on the screen. The first thing I would like to cover is that I did a video way back many years ago when I got the original VRT 330 and I processed Brazil nuts into a nice Brazil nut butter. Now at that time that task was not included warranty task, meaning it would void your warranty if you did that task in the Omega VRT juicer. Since that time, the Hurom vertical juicer, the Covings vertical juicer, and the Omega company have now approved making nut butters and frozen sorbets as an approved use, and you will be covered under warranty should your machine break after doing the task I'm going to show you. That being said, there are specific instructions you need to follow. So this video is having to do with how to process nuts, and I have another video on YouTube to process the frozen fruit. So please pay attention to this video or the other video if you want to process those two items. There's some special things you need to do to ensure your success and for the long-term durability of your machine. I guess without further ado, let's talk more about the nut butters. So you know, just like you could go to the store and buy peanut butter, unfortunately most peanut butters have artificial flavors maybe and colors and all kinds of stuff besides peanuts. So when you have the Omega VRT juicer, you can make your own fresh peanut butter, and we're going to use some roasted and salted peanuts today, so that's real easy. We're going to make some roasted and salted peanut butter. But more importantly, besides the roasted and salted peanut butter, we're going to use something even better. And what these guys are, we'll go ahead and open up these guys to show you guys what they look like here. Once again, these are the standard peanuts. Man, I haven't smelled those in a while. Those are just your standard peanuts there. And what I'm holding here in this hand, these are actually wild heirloom jungle peanuts. So these are the predecessors to the hybridized or the peanuts here. So these ones, they say it does not contain aflatoxin. So aflatoxin is the reason why many people may get allergic to peanuts. That being said, if you do have allergies, I would still be very cautious. That's what I've heard, and I don't know if that's true or not. The other thing is these guys look really cool. I mean, I don't know if you can see them on a picture, but they're almost like striped almost. And these have a nice, unique flavor. These actually are sold in many health food stores, although not all of them. You could also do an internet search for wild jungle peanuts. They're actually raw, so they're not roasted. I guess you could roast them if you want to. And that's the thing. The first thing I want to talk about is if you are processing nuts to make a nut butter, it's very important that you have a nut that is either A, roasted, because when they roast the nut, they usually roast them in oil, and then the nut will have a higher oil content. And when a nut has a high oil content and you grind it up, then it'll stick together and congeal together like the peanut butter. The problem arises when you try to use nuts that have a low oil content and are not roasted. So for example, almonds don't have a high oil content. If you put them through here, it'll probably make an almond flour, in which case you're going to take that out and then put it back through again, and hopefully after doing it a few times it'll finally start to congeal together. That being said, you could take the almond flour and then add some almond oil or maybe some coconut oil and then get it to stick together. That being said, if you are using roasted nuts, it should pretty much stick together the first time without any problem. Another thing that people always ask is, hey John, if it's not sticking together, can I just add water? Can I soak my nuts and then process them? Well, you could absolutely do whatever you want in the machine. But keep in mind, if you do soak your nuts, I don't like soaked nuts, but if you soak your nuts and then put them through the machine, then you're going to basically get, a soaked nut butter. Soaked nut butter, I don't know. But it's going to be full of water, and it's going to be more diluted. It's not going to taste as rich. And the other thing is because you did add water, now there's an opportunity for mold and things to grow. So then you would definitely want to refrigerate that and use it within a few days. If you do it without the water, then your nut butter is more shelf stable and may last, I'd probably save it several weeks. That being said, if you do have a machine to process your own nuts, I would encourage you to only make as much nut butter as you're going to use in that sitting or maybe in the next few days, and then get out your machine again to process more nut butters. That being said, if you do want to process a lot of nut butters, the Omega Vert is not the ideal juicer to do nut butters. The Omega Vert was designed from the ground up to juice your fruits and vegetables, and at that it does a great job. But for nut butters and banana sorbets, while it will do it, it's not designed to do it, so it's kind of not going to do it that great, but it does it. And if you want to do it very occasionally, then this would be a good machine to do it. If you want to do nut butters and banana sorbets a lot, then I would recommend a different Omega, the Omega 8004 or 8006. And I do have a really good video comparing the Omega 8004, 8006 to the Omega Vert. Each juicer has its pros and cons, and you basically got to figure out what's most important to you in buying a juicer and what you're going to be juicing the most, and get the juicer that's going to do the best job for you. The best juicer for me may not be the best juicer for you. Nonetheless, let's get back to today's program on how to process the nuts in the Omega Vert juicer. The first step is to secure your nuts, so get a good high quality nut. Make sure all the shells are completely removed. Those will actually break the juicer, and it will not separate out the shell fragments. The next step is to take the juicer apart, so we're going to go ahead and take this apart. We're not going to go over all the different parts, including the auger, the screen, and the wiping blade, but what we do need to take a look at is the bowl here. And on the bowl here, it normally has a little pulp flap. This little yellow flap that's normally pushed in, and when you're juicing, you always want that flap pushed in. The question arises, John, what does that flap do? Well, that flap is in there to keep back pressure on the produce that's being juiced so that you will get the highest yield juice, and the pulp will stay in there until it's dry and then finally get ejected out. That being said, because we are not juicing, we're making a nut butter, we don't want that pulp flap. The pulp flap will actually back things up and put more load on the motor, which is not a good thing in this situation. So what we're going to do is we're going to want to actually pull this out and kind of just like leave it hanging there. Maybe you could just push it in like a fraction of a millimeter so that, the opening on this side is completely open, but it's not restricting any flow. We want a good flow through so that the ground up nuts can actually come out the juicer itself. So now that we got that opened up, we're going to go ahead and put this machine back together. Now we're going to actually process those roasted peanuts into a peanut butter to see how well the Omega Vert's going to do in the ideal situation. Once again, the ideal situation is roasted nuts that have been roasted in oil that have a high oil content. They should tend to congeal better. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and pour these in the bowl here. We happen to get the roasted and salted ones today, but of course, if you don't want to eat the salt, which I don't recommend, you can just get the roasted ones. That being said, I also encourage you to buy organic nuts whenever possible. Let's see. Next step is we're going to go ahead and put this container underneath to catch all the peanut butter it's going to make, and we're just going to go ahead and save it actually in this container. And we're also going to put something in case we get some leakage out of the juice side. The next step is simply turn it on, and we're going to start to feed in those nuts. Now when feeding nuts into the machine, you want to feed them slowly. Don't just dump the whole thing in at once. Feed a few in at a time and let the machine work through it and do its thing. As you can see, we're instantly getting out some what looks like to be peanut butter. It's grinding up, looks like fairly well. Wow, now it's really working well. Look at that. This would not be the crunchy, this would be more of the smooth kind peanut butter. Look at that. This is nice and ground up. Man, and this stuff would be super delicious. This, folks, is 100% real peanut butter. I always encourage you guys to buy the whole food ingredients at the store and then take it home and process it yourself, whether you're using a juicer, a blender, food processor, or other equipment. When you do that, you're guaranteeing yourself the highest quality food with no additives. I mean, in many peanut butters, they may add all kinds of crazy things, but if you do it yourself, you know what you're going to get. Check it out. Out this side, we got the peanut butter. Once again, it's nice, smooth grind here, right into the container. Now, the first little bit that came out wasn't totally working too well, but now that it's going, it's doing really good. We're going to go ahead and turn this off and see what we got in the inside of the machine. Wow, look at that. So inside the machine here, now the super fine peanut butter is right here. Wow. Oh my gosh, this totally smells like the peanut butter when I was a kid. You could see here, this stuff is the ultra creamy stuff, man. This is the bomb right here, look at that. Smells so good. We're gonna go ahead and just store this off in the jar here. But nonetheless, it looks like making the peanut butter with a high oil content roasted peanuts worked totally great. The stuff that's the bomb is right here, man. Check this stuff out. This stuff is the creamy stuff. I mean, it was forced through the screen, so there's no fiber in it. That's gonna be super good. And this stuff smells like how peanut butter should smell. Anyways, I'm going to go ahead and get this stuff cleaned up. We're going to come right back at you to juice those wild jungle peanuts. Once again, those are not roasted, so it's going to be interesting to see how those do in comparison to the roasted regular peanuts. So you just saw how I processed the roasted peanuts into the peanut butter. It worked quite well. It stuck together really nice. Now what we're going to do for a change is we're going to process these guys, which are the wild jungle peanuts, into a peanut butter, and we're going to see if it sticks together. Like I said earlier, if you're using raw nuts that doesn't have a high oil content, then it's not going to congeal together. I've never actually processed these through the Omega VRT, so let's see what we're going to get. We're going to go ahead and turn this machine on, and once again, very important, take a handful of nuts and drop only a few in at a time. If you drop in like all of them at one time, it's going to jam the machine up, and you don't want that happening. So you can see after instantly putting the nuts in, we're getting a wild jungle peanut meal. Now it's not sticking together, it's not a butter, it's not working as well as the roasted peanuts because these guys don't have a high oil content. So you can see here, it's literally making a nice powder out of these wild jungle peanuts, and a few things are coming out the juice side. Let me go ahead and feed some more in. Let's see if we can get this to stop up for you guys and show you what that looks like. Alright, well that's working pretty good, but once again, you don't want to feed them that fast. You want to only feed a few at a time and let the machine work. Otherwise it can cause an excess load on your machine there. Alright, so here's the last handful of nuts there. Looked like it's working really good. We are getting some stuff out of the juice side. That's because, you know, the screen is in there and not a blank plate. The blank plate would just be a solid piece without the holes. And that's how it would be if you got like an 8004, 8006. Once again, the VRT was not designed to do this, but will do this. And if you are wondering, Omega's not going to be coming out with a blank for this. I've asked them many times. But if you want, feel free to give them a call and let them know that you'd like a blank for this model. So you can see here, we got all the wild jungle peanut flour. I mean, this stuff's like ground down. It pretty much grinded up pretty good. There's some small bits, but it worked pretty well. If you want to try to get this congealed into a butter, the next step is to basically pour it back through the machine and see what happens. I don't know what's going to happen. I've never done this before. So, as you can see, it's just coming back through the machine again. And sometimes when you process it again like this, it sticks together a little bit better. And I think it is sticking it together a little bit better, but not much. Alright, yeah, so there it is. Remember when we put it through the first time, we had a nice big fluffy jar full, and now it's like more compact and hard pack. Let's go ahead and take that stuff out, put that in there. So yeah, it's beginning to stick together more. Once again, this machine is not designed as a nut butter maker. If you are really into making nut butters, once again, the machine that's going to do that the best is the Champion Juicer. Now why? The Champion Juicer, when you put the blank plate in, it's running at a high speed, number one, so there's going to be more friction and heat, which is going to help the pulverized or ground up nuts congeal and stick together better. That being said, if you are juicing with the Champion, because it is, you know, grinding and adding some heat, that may tend to oxidize your juice a little bit more. So let's go ahead and put this mixture back through again and see what happens. So as you can see, I don't know if you guys could see that, but as it's coming out now, it's actually even more stuck together than last time through. And over on this side, we're getting pretty much some nice fine flour. Definitely more of a butter consistency on that side. Once again, we're going to go ahead and dump this stuff back through and get it to process through the machine one more time. You can sit here all night feeding it back through and more, and it'll probably progressively stick together more and more, or you can just add some oil to this to get it to really stick together. At this point, you have a nice flour that's starting to congeal and stick together, but it's still not quite a butter. I guess if you mashed it down and pressed it together, it would kind of almost be spreadable. I think that's pretty much the end of the test. Let's go ahead and feed the rest of this stuff in there. Turn that off, and let's show you guys the mess on the inside of the machine now. Once again, this machine is not designed to make nut butter, so it's gonna be a little bit more difficult to clean than a standard Omega 8004, 8006 that is designed to do this. Now, one of the things I'm noticing, because we are doing the nut butters and we're getting some backup in here, it is actually hard to unloosen this, so the top's not easily coming off. So if this does happen, you need to push down while turning. So we're gonna push down and then turn to get this off, and then hopefully it's going to come off. And that's because this machine, once again, is not designed to do this process, but will. And what's happening is there's nut butter getting underneath the auger, and it's lifting the auger up, which then is putting excess pressure on your top housing, so it's not easily coming apart. Let's go ahead and take this auger out and show you guys what we got. So you can see here we still have a lot of the nut powder stuck on the auger. On a horizontal version juicer, when processing nuts, you'll have probably much less residual pulp on the auger than this. Next, we got the screen, and you can see on the inside of the screen and the outside of the screen, there's more nut butter. So the inside, we're just going to take a spatula and spatula this down into our bowl here. And once again, this is not necessarily congealed together. It's more of like a flour texture that's actually sticking together. And if you didn't notice already, this does get a little bit messy with all the little nut meal all over the place. So once again, if you do want to really seriously make nut butters and not just do it like once a year, you might want to get the juicer that's just going to do it properly, because this is just not really cutting it, in my opinion. So on the outside of the screen, though, this is the creme de la creme. This is actually where the nut butter was actually forced through the screen, so there's no fiber in this. So this stuff should taste really rich. That's like your creamy nut butter from the store. There's like no bits in there. That's the bomb. That's the best stuff right there. I've never had wild jungle peanut butter. Next, we're going to take out the automatic wiping blade. And the stuff on this that's falling off is pretty much the stuff that was forced through the screen. It's fairly creamy, but not totally sticking together. It's almost like a, I don't know, marzipan. Crumbles apart. But definitely good nonetheless. Once again, this is because the raw nuts have a low oil content. So another thing you could do is, as you're adding nuts, drizzle in some oil at the same time. If it was me doing it, I probably wouldn't add the oil. I'd probably just run it a whole bunch of times because I don't want to add excess oil to my diet. Excess oil, or just 1 tablespoon of oil, is 120 calories, and you could pack on the calories really fast. And especially if you're not burning them, guess where they're going to go? Your thighs. My favorite way to use nuts, actually, though, is not through the juicer and not to make my own nut butters. My favorite way to use it is in the blender. Usually every night I make a dressing out of a fruit and a nut. So, for example, maybe tonight I'm going to use actually this nut butter here, and I could use the nuts and not the nut butter. I'm going to make an orange wild jungle peanut dressing. So I'm just going to blend the wild jungle peanuts with orange juice. In this case, because I got the nut butter, I'm going to just blend the nut butter with the orange juice. It's easier to just blend the nuts and not process them into nut butter and then blend them. So I pretty much got that cleaned off here. Now the biggest problem here is this guy. We got nut butter stuck all through here in this outlet, and these are some tight passageways. Once again, while this machine will do this, don't recommend this if you want to do it a lot, because it's kind of gets messy and it's kind of a pain, and once again, not designed to do this. The hardest part to clean is where the pulp normally comes out, especially when it's full of all nut butter. So you may want to use the special screwdriver and brush that comes with the machine to try to get all that dislodged here. Alright, so we got that part clean. Now we need to wash this up in the sink. It's very important when cleaning the Omega Vert to ensure that you get the screen entirely clear of all the gooey ooey nut butters, because if you leave something stuck in there, then it may harden inside your screen, clog up the holes, which then is going to lower your yield when juicing fruits and vegetables, which is the main use of this machine. So that was a success. As you just saw, we made the regular roasted peanut butter work really well. We're just going to go ahead and put the top on it and store it right in here. Now, if you do make your own nut butters, I encourage you to use them within the next several weeks. It's always best to make the food freshest. So if you're using a little bit, just make a little bit for that sitting. And then get your juicer out the next time to make a little bit more. And you have the flexibility to do that if you own your machine that'll make nut butters like the Omega Vert. So definitely, while the roasted peanuts worked really well, and I was quite satisfied with how this worked, the wild jungle peanuts, after we compress it down, it kind of does look like a nut butter, but you can see there's still like stuff floating around. It's not completely congealed together. Once again, that's because of the oil content is much lower. So we could add some oil into there and mix it together, and then it would actually stick together, or we could try to continue to feed it through a bunch of times, and then it just kind of makes more of a mess, and I don't know, might work just a little bit better, but not much. So as you just saw, we were fairly successful making nut butters in the Omega Vert. If you do want to process a lot of raw nuts, then I definitely don't recommend the Omega Vert. The Omega Vert will work in a pinch to make nut butters, but it's not designed to do this, so it kind of gets a bit messy. I would encourage you, if you do want to make a lot of nut butters, look up the Omega 8004 or 8006 Nutrition Center. I have a video on the Omega 8006 Nutrition Center making nut butters, and it does significantly better and is a lot easier to clean than the Omega Vert 330 HD that I showed you today. So hopefully this answers some questions about how the Omega Vert 330 HD does nut butters and how to do it if you want to do it. That being said, I definitely don't recommend it. Once again, my name is John Kohler with DiscountJuicers.com. Be sure to visit DiscountJuicers.com/YouTube for special promotional offers for our YouTube visitors.